It is my honor to introduce Ms. Maribeth Johnson, MA, founder of International Protocol Institute of California. She is going to be talking about connections are the lifeblood of diplomacy. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to give the floor to Mary. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nicoletta. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I second Dr. Elizabeth and Felipe on what a wonderful job you're all doing here. Thank you for highlighting protocol and its importance in the world, protocol and diplomacy. I wonder if is my camera on here? It is. Okay. I would like, oops, it's not. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Okay. I would like to share a screen with you, if I may. And let's see. Here it is. Here it is. Technical wizard that I am here. I need to do this in, here we go. All right. Okay. So I love the title of Connections. It's the lifeblood of diplomacy. And my big question here today is, are our modern diplomats ready for diplomacy? And as Patricia was saying, has diplomacy failed? One wonders because it's a, as I will go along in the presentation, it is much more complex than it used to be. And so, and it's not by any stretch of the imagination an easy profession. Connections, the lifeblood of diplomacy. We've all made connections. I think Dr. Elizabeth was saying about she knew somebody at the UN that she was going to talk to you about promoting World Protocol Day. That's how it works. I come from Ireland. We live on a system of connections. Everybody knows everybody who knows somebody else. And the same thing when I lived in the Middle East, it was called wasta. You've got to have wasta. You've got to know somebody. And then you know somebody in the government. Then you know somebody over here, a family. And that's how it works. But it takes emotional intelligence to be able to, and social skills and relationship building skills to make those connections. Now, what I'm going to talk about is a story of the friendship that saved the world between Winston Churchill and President Roosevelt before World War II. And I wrote this in my thesis for my master's, so thank heavens I can use it again. It is one of the most memorable examples of what had at first been perceived as an unlikely friendship was that of Prime Minister Winston Churchill and President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Their friendship became so strong that Churchill wrote to Roosevelt in March 1945 saying, "Our friendship is the rock on which I build for the future of the world, so long as I am one of the builders." So they became inseparable and they actually really saved the world. But however, it didn't start out like that. And that's my point. Making connections is not always that easy because we're all different personalities. We come from different backgrounds. We have different attitudes. President Roosevelt did not like Winston Churchill at all at the beginning. And in fact, he called him a brash, ungentlemanly, overly talkative, frequently interrupting person, showing little respect for rank and seniority. But it all changed despite all of that in 1938 when President Roosevelt saw or predicted the conflict between Nazi Germany and Europe. He predicted it. So he contacted Winston Churchill, and from there we know what happened. But again, because my focus was on emotional intelligence, which of course it wasn't called that back then, but that was my focus here. That's really what it was. The two men share the emotional elements of vision, intuition, courage, loyalty, and optimism. That's what every diplomat has to have innately. But again, I will try to point out that it's different. Diplomats are different in the modern day, which might be okay. We hope it will be. And so that was, they created a reciprocal bond, which is built on trust, and they shared a grand project. So, what I'm going to discuss is the essential attributes of the diplomat. Diplomacy reimagined, it's a network of actors. It's nothing like it used to be back in their time. Emotional intelligence in face to face meetings, and emotional intelligence in diplomacy itself. So, let us begin. The essential attributes of the diplomat. When I was doing my thesis, Ambassador Wilfred Balansky, I can see it here, who was the German diplomat, or is, who served as chief of protocol under Chancellors Gerhard Schroeder and Angela Merkel. Now, he contributed greatly to my questionnaire, and he was of a generation that I wanted to get his opinion on what he thought of diplomats of today. And he says the essence of diplomatic practice consists of managing situational and contextual ambivalence and harmonizing divergent interests and expectations within a holistic approach of emotional, social, and intercultural intelligence. I think this says it all. Every word in here means something. They have to manage situations and deal with ambivalence. Now, again, everything is online, everything is technology. Have they learned how to handle ambivalence and how to harmonize divergent interests? As what I think was it, has diplomacy failed? Have they learned to harmonize divergent interests and expectations within a holistic approach of emotional, social, and intercultural intelligence? That's emotional intelligence, understanding the culture of the people you're doing business with, or in doing making diplomatic decisions with. So the 5 essential elements, according to the ambassador, were for an operating system for solutions were multi-log. I thought that was a great word. Our multi-log, person-to-person contact, face-to-face conversation. Emotional cognition and dynamics, perception management, how one is perceived, empathetic, our empathy and sensitivity and humility. Now, any of us who have taught cultural differences understands that sensitivity is different. It is perceived differently in different parts of the world. And also humility. Humility in the West is one has to be careful with it because it looks like lack of confidence. But humility in Asia is expected. So it comes down to expectations. What is expected in different cultures, and if the diplomat doesn't understand what's expected, then it can lead to misunderstandings. So dealing with uncertainties, that goes back to the ambivalence, through ethically principled pragmatism. That's an excellent expression. Ethics come come to the fore, and being pragmatic. All of these are traits of emotional intelligence, and learning how to compromise and build consensus. That goes to the intelligence of a person making compromises and strategic compromises and creating a consensus. So mutual restraint for the sake of harmonization, understanding that it's not about one personally, it's the big picture. It's about the world, really. And awareness of the context of global issues. And one ambassador said that the diplomats' intelligence or understanding must be a mile long and an inch deep. In fact, they have to know so much about everything, but they can't know everything about everything. So it has to be a mile long and an inch deep because they have to understand how to make conversation, how to be interesting to have a conversation with. And that is how connections are formed as well. Diplomacy reimagined. What is it like today? What was it like back then? Today it's a network of diplomatic actors. Anne-Marie Slaughter, Director of Policy Planning, U.S. State Department, states, it is no longer club diplomacy. What's club diplomacy? This is when everybody belonged to the same club. They came from the same families. They went to the same school. They understood. They had a basic understanding of uh, how they operated, and it was easier in some ways. Today, it's nothing like that. The key to successful foreign policy is a network of diplomacy. Um, Building relationships for the modern diplomat is and will be far more complicated due to a plethora of actors with different values, standards, and interests, correlating with the world of science, technology, business, finance, culture, NGOs, think tanks, and civil society. And now the diplomats themselves are specialized in science or engineering or whatever it may be. So it gives you an idea of the types of, it's no longer just club diplomacy, obviously. And in my questionnaire, I asked, would it be useful if soft skills, emotional intelligence were taught in diplomatic training academies? And a scientist who was both a diplomat and an ambassador replied, yes, as someone trained in the sciences, it was a shock to me, even before I moved into diplomacy, how badly equipped I was for this part of the job. It is easy, albeit naive, to think that logic is sufficient for bridging gaps and coming to an agreement, but this is far from being correct in reality. So, in reality, it doesn't matter how smart one is or how much logic somebody has or how well educated they are if they don't have the emotional intelligence to make those connections. Um, the second major aspect here is that the brains of the modern diplomat have been impacted by technology. Who knew? So, effects of technology on the brain of the modern diplomat. As you can see here, many areas of the brain development were and are impacted by technology, from the prefrontal lobe to the cerebellum to the parietal lobe, affecting personality traits, language comprehension, cognitive function, and social behavior. What am I talking about? Emotional intelligence, all of these skills which are absolutely non-negotiable when it comes to diplomacy. The instant gratification inherent in online activities oftentimes leads to attention deficit, impulsivity, boredom when not stimulated, and lack of ability to self-regulate. Now, how many of you have seen people walking down the street, people in the dining room, people in the homes, people are attached at the hip to their telephones. And in that way, they lose out, and I'm going to get to this, the face-to-face interactions, which is a skill. And I'm not saying all of the millennial generation or the on down are all like this, but it can be an issue. And with the advent of AI and all of the technology, it's actually good that they're so good at this in this area. So it's not all, it's some positives in there. So emotional intelligence in face-to-face meetings. In his argument on recent advances in neuroscience and psychology, Professor Holmes claims that frequent face-to-face contact is essential to successful assessment of intentions. What is diplomacy? When people sit around at a conference table, they're negotiating. They want to as I say, compromise and create consensus. But if we're not comfortable in face-to-face interactions, and if we don't learn how to read it properly, how can we assess the intentions? Assessment of intentions is what diplomats are there to do. They obviously, with the knowledge and the context of the situation, they have to assess the intentions of both the diplomat and the country and the geopolitical situation. So assessment of intentions is key to diplomacy. George Bush, when he met President Putin first, a long time ago, he said he looked him in the eye and he could see the measure of the man. But when Hillary Clinton looked him in the eye, she said, oh, that's a KGB agent. You see? So it's all perception and assessment of intentions. Why now? And to compound the issue, Why are virtual interactions less efficient? And we had to have them. Thank heavens we had them for the pandemic. Or I don't know what would have happened if we did not have that ability. But with digitalization, diplomacy loses this moment of complicity. And I have a book here called Back Channels by William J. Burns. And this is what he talks about. Diplomacy is not necessarily conducted around the conference table or in public. And as you all know, sometimes it's in the corridor, sometimes it's in having a coffee, uh, and where people get to know each other, again, make a connection, that diplomacy really occurs. So when it's virtual, I can't see your body language. I can't pick up the messages that we all give. So we lose out on the moments of complicity, the interpersonal exchange, including perceptions of language, as well as corporal and visual attitudes. You see me from here up. I could be wearing jeans. A lot of people do. And it's fine so long as you don't stand up. As well as corporal and visual, nonverbal and symbolic communications and gestures. So you can only see my gestures from this half of me. You don't see the other half. So you lose out literally on half the messages. And through virtualization of communications, though the virtualization of communications does not fundamentally change diplomatic practice, it deprives them of the informal human contacts which form the essence of this profession. That's from the Palgrave Handbook of Diplomatic Reform and Innovation. I strongly commend that book for it's been rewritten. It's an excellent book. And so I did this. This was one of the art blogs I put on my website. The 99. It's couch. The protocol negotiations. The well-placed couch. Who would have thought? It can come down to something as simple as placing a couch in the right place or having the right coffee. And I will explain what I mean by that. Whereas traditional emotional diplomacy advocates for an official state-ordained diplomacy policy, there are times when an interpersonal emotions may be the key to moving things forward. Interpersonal relations emotions to moving things forward. In 1993, there was a meeting between the Jordanians and the Israelis in Washington. And in the Jordanian party, there were Palestinians. So obviously there was a conflict and nobody wanted to talk they didn't want to talk. So there they were in this hotel and they didn't want to talk. So the delegations went into the meeting rooms upstairs and the heads of the delegations sat downstairs on couches. Nobody was making any attempt to meet and get the job done. So it is the most interesting thing that one day, mostly the diplomats would pass through the lobby. They would avoid eye contact and everything. But one day, while the Israeli head of the delegation was pouring a cup of coffee, and he took a sip, and he blurted out to the person standing next to him, the head of the Jordanian delegation, he said, "Wouldn't you agree that the coffee is awful? Wouldn't you?" And from then on, it broke the ice because, of course, they come from the Middle East. There's great Turkish coffee, and this coffee is terribly tasting coffee in the lobby in a Washington hotel was certainly not up to par. So it was something as simple as that can break the ice, that can make the connection. And as protocol people, we need to be aware of those little small things. Every little detail counts. Emotional intelligence traits. So what are they? What is this? I recommend this book as well. It's Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. Obviously, diplomats are chosen and They're very well educated. They're very smart. They have high IQs. But he maintains, as do I, that sometimes emotional intelligence can matter more. So, what is emotional intelligence? First of all, it's self awareness. You have to know yourself. Because if you know yourself, then you know how you're impacting others and you know your effect on other people. And self regulation. If you go back to uh, the brain, the technology, or the effects of technology on the brain, you'll see that the attention span is not has been impacted by technology, and also self-regulation because they want immediate gratification. It has to be immediate. It has to be now. So self-regulation, particularly in times of crisis. I mean, there's plenty of crisis going on in the world now, as we know. Empathy builds trust. And that again is being self-aware and walking in their shoes, getting out of yourself. What are they going through? How hard is it for them? That establishes connections because they see that you really care. And intuition, as as women, I think that we top the charts when it comes to intuition. We can feel when something isn't right. And anticipation. And last year when I spoke, I talked about anticipation and intuition, anticipating when something can go wrong. And relationship, and I'll talk more about that. And relationship building, of course, which is the key. Uh, Empathy, let's talk a little about that. Without empathy, strategy is like playing chess with yourself. You always win, but it is poor preparation for playing with an opponent. Diplomats in cyberspace must be able to look at problems through the eyes of their rivals. This is Sean Reardon, and he wrote it's a new book on cyber diplomacy. But this is just virtually, but can't you imagine in physical space? Uh, we have to be able to see and walk in the other person's shoes or the other country's shoes, whatever it is. Humor, timing, and culture. I personally love a sense of humor. The comedian John Cleese said, "If I can get you to laugh with me, you like me better, which makes you more open to my ideas." And Boris Johnson, he was the master of humor, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. That's why timing is everything, and you also take a risk when you have a sense of humor. But sometimes it really is it breaks the ice. Former Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of Great Britain, said, "I think telling jokes is a very effective way of getting your diplomatic message across. But you have to be that type of person as well. But if everybody's sitting around the table and it's also serious, really, really, I hope you have a lot of coffee." Uh, and President Zelensky said, "Laughter is a weapon that is fatal to men of marble." Now, we know that President Zelensky is a former actor and I think comedian. So Ronald Reagan used humor. And I suggest it's a great way to connect, but again, use with caution. Anticipation. This is last year I talked about Ursula von der Leyen, and she went to see or meet with the Turkish president, and she was seated just on the couch, not next to him, and it was really quite a breach in protocol, but she handled it very well. But what was the big message? What was the signal that Turkey wanted to send? So that we have to anticipate that. We have to understand the policies and the geopolitical state and all of the whole big picture. It's not just about, as I said, the couch or the chair. It's what's going on in the world. A breach in diplomatic protocol resonates throughout the world, signaling a lack of respect that could be considered as a counter strategy, indicating an oppositional or negative position at the outset of talks. So that's no way to begin, obviously. And those are all emotional intelligent traits. Let's see this place. This is a point of a protocol. I live for these things to happen because they're so indicative of small things to anticipate. Who would have known or who would have thought this would happen? Chinese foreign minister removes his tie when meeting with his counterpart in Singapore. Now, as a protocol person, would I have thought about that? He was in the limousine when he did this, going to meet him. Okay. So what do you do? How could you have anticipated this? And I've talked to somebody, a few people about this, and it's uh I believe because Asian is all about saving face, that the Chinese, when he met his counterpart in Singapore, didn't want to make him feel bad because he was not wearing a tie. So that was awfully generous and kind of him. On the other hand, it was an event. It was a media event. So those small things that we can possibly anticipate, but over time, we learn that things can go wrong. I have a lot of stories, and I would keep you here all day if I told you. And here's another one. Oh no, here's this one. This is President Xi gets lost on the red carpet at the BRICS venue, and it's a breach in the actually protocol resonates around the world. So he's going to look back one more time. And he's lost because he's people cannot go are not with him on the red carpet. Talk about red faces all around. What happened was the security people wouldn't let his entourage follow him. Who would have known that was going to happen? And that's where I think protocol people should work very closely with security, and they can tip us off on what's going to happen. It's just an extra set of eyes and ears to let us know what might happen. But I mean, some of these things you can't anticipate them. But again, it comes with experience. Uh, Strategic relationships, connections are the key to diplomacy, and relationship building takes perseverance. Dr. Johan Carbalya, who was the director of the Diplo Foundation, asserts that real diplomatic impact only comes from relationship building and continuous and sustained mutual understanding. Diplomacy is more like a marathon, not a sprint. And it takes time to build those connections. So there we covered the essential attributes of the diplomat and diplomacy, how complex it is, and it's not for the faint of heart now because of all the different actors that are there, all the different personalities you have to deal with, um, and the emotional intelligence required in face-to-face meetings, and emotional intelligence itself in diplomacy. And my question is, and not to generalize, do our diplomats, our modern diplomats, have these skills? And can it be taught? That was my hypothesis. Can it be taught in diplomatic academies? And many of the the people I in questionnaire said it depended on generation that answered the questions. And the diplomats of my age said they should have emotional intelligence before they become diplomats. It should be innate. Well, I am sorry, technology is here and it is no longer innate because the brains are actually uh, they're changed because of technology. And so we need to understand that. And it's something that can be taught. I just saw an article lately about video games for diplomats or simulations that situations where okay what would you do, these things can be taught in training programs, um, and so especially with AI, the anticipation and the misinformation, the disinformation that's out there, what a complex world we live in. And to learn more, we have a 5-day certification course. We just did one. trained to be an international protocol specialist here in San Diego in September. And the last one we did, we customized it because it was a combination of the US military based in Bahrain, and we covered all of the MENA region on top of the general information. So it can be customized depending on the group. And so we invite you all to San Diego. And hopefully next year, the whole thing will be in San Diego, right, Nicoletta?
Yes,
So
why
thank
not?
you. Why not? Thank you.
We have
And thank you
competition.
all for doing so much. And I think Elizabeth really covered what impact you're having and the public diplomacy that's involved. I can't imagine the work that you had to do on all of this. And of course, I kept getting my time zones mixed up. See, you have to. I'm just one, and you have to take care of so many people. So I thank you. And let's all celebrate World Protocol Day, May 11th, and do everything we can from our ends to make this work for you, because you deserve it, and we all deserve it, and the world deserves it.
Amen to that.
Amen to
Amen to
that.
that.
Yes, we're
That's very
here.
well
Let's do it.
articulated, Marie. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you in person next year.
Ah, I love it.
Amen to that. That's all I'm going to say. Amen to that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, let's plan.